You know, I have it up on the screen, so.
I can't even see you on the screen.
Okay.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on. Let me rejoin.
Okay.
See if that works. Okay. Again, can you hear me, Cindy?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Again, call the order meeting to order at 9:02 a.m. How's everyone doing this morning? A nod, or if you can go ahead with the roll call, Cindy.
I'm going to scan through this mask, okay? So give, Dr. Miriam Glamad, IT Dirección. Jacqueline Calloway, Coalition for Black Student Achievement.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Amanda Canetti, Compass. Rex Barnes, Compass. I think I saw him here. Yes,
I'm here.
Thank you. Bobby Howard Davis, Division of Blind Services. Kimberly Spire O, ESC Advisory Committee.
Here.
Carla Donaldson, ESC Advisory Committee Alternate. Reggie Durandis, For the Children. Sue Davis Killian, Gold Coast.
Here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Lucia Barnes isn't here. Maria Antuña, Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Dr. Joaquin Garcia, Hispanic Education Coalition. Rachel Mondesir, West Palm Beach NAACP.
Present.
Marcia Guthrie, West Palm Beach NAACP, and I believe she'll be checking in a little bit. Charmaine.
Good morning, I'm here.
Oh, you're here? Perfect.
Cindy, I'm gonna send you my presentation in a few minutes, okay?
Okay. Evelyn Vargas, Puerto Rican Chamber. Juan Pagan, Puerto Rican Hispanic Chamber.
Aquí.
LaTerrence Reed, Urban League of Palm Beach County. Carrie Whittle, FAU card.
Here.
Robin Jones, FAU card.
Here.
Charmaine Postal, Palm Beach County PTA.
Here.
Okay. Cassandra Corbin Thaddeus, she's not going to make it today. Tri-Cities Mary Evans. Tri-Cities Eddie Rhodes. Black Chamber of Commerce Joseph Sanchez.
Present.
And that's it. We're ready.
Cindy, thank you so much for that. I think you took off. There we go. The next item on the agenda is the approval of June meeting minutes. If we can put the June meeting minutes on there, it should have been sent to everyone in advance. But just in case it has not, it is on there. If there are no objections, I'm not going to read it. You can scroll up, Cindy.
Motion.
Three.
We have a motion by
Juan Pagan.
Pagan.
Yes.
Yes. We have a motion by Mr. Pagan for the meeting minutes, and look like Mark
I'll
is
second.
saying.
Oh,
Who is the second?
this Sue Davis Killian.
Okay.
All right. I'm not sure what. Oh, never mind. I thought that was the comment, but that's your actual screen that's locked in. All right, Cindy. Next item on the agenda. All in favor of the meeting minutes? I don't think we have to do all this, but we're just going to do it for recording purposes. Say aye. Any opposers? Hearing none. Meeting minutes is approved.
I'll just abstain since I wasn't there. This is John.
Got it. Updates from Assistant Superintendent, Ms. Carlene Millen.
Hey guys, Cindy, can I share my screen real quick to do the updates?
Sure.
All right. And then I'll come back out. All right. So I have a few district updates since the last time we met. And culture responsibility, as you know, the New York Equity Institute had given recommendations back in 2016 that our district do more around cultural responsive awareness. And so we created, fast forward to 2020 now, we have people hired, and we created the culture responsive teaching and a culture responsive leadership. So here's an update on both. Overwhelmingly positive feedback and responses. So of course, all of this is currently still voluntary. It was supposed to launch in April, but of course, due to COVID, we spent this time converting it to online virtual so that we wouldn't lose any more time. And so it launched again in July. It officially launched in July, mid-July, almost in July. And so far, even with it launching in July, we have over 420 teachers registered and or have taken course number 1. And the demand is great. So it's not a day that I don't get an email message. Ms. Starks doesn't get an email message. And the best part about it is those that have taken the course, the relationship building pieces are still going. So now we have people getting together in their groups in schools, asking for Ms. Stark's advice around what direction they should go in, even help with PLCs. So it has been overwhelmingly positive. And as of yesterday, when I checked registration, it was 420 that have registered and or have taken the course. Here are some of the responses that were put on Twitter. I only pulled a few of them just to give an idea, but it's literally between the email messages, the social media acknowledgments, and just knowing that the word is spreading, because now I'm getting emails from teachers saying, hey, all the courses are full. When will be the next one? So we set up a system on the last day of every month to make it easy. No matter what that last day is, everyone is being trained to go into e-learning and see what the upcoming courses are for the next month. So Ms. Starks and I, we meet daily. We reflect, we refine, and we plan. And so we've already planned out the courses that will be offered for September. They will be put in on Monday, August 31st, because that's the last day of the month. So we're getting teachers to the point of, look, it may be full now. I know you want to attend. Hold off to Monday. You can register for September courses. We originally were launching Culture Responsive Leadership. It was supposed to be launched in this month, August. But considering the fact that so many teachers still wanted to take Culture Responsive teaching after they heard about it in July, and we pushed the date back for school, like school change, we moved Culture Responsive Leadership to launch next month so that as many teachers as we could get as possible slots available, and dedicated the entire month of August for only CRT. So these are some of the responses. Demand is great. It's a good problem to have, trust me. And on Monday, we will be putting in the courses, all the opportunities they have for the month of September. September also is the month we're launching Culture Responsive Leadership. Now we get emails on a regular basis in regard to providing when will this open, because we did not open it in this month. So we just launched it, and within 2 days, over 85 leaders have already registered I think we launched it on Tuesday or Wednesday. And already the registration is coming in left and right. And so September, we dedicated for culture responsive leadership with heavier sessions on that end, the number being offered, while still offering culture responsive teaching. And Ms. Starks is doing both. Racial Equity Institute, as you know, we use a grant every year. We apply for a grant to the state to get the funds for Racial Equity Institute. And we've applied for that grant again. It's a different, we're in a different space this time in regard to the funding and who's over the state grant this year. So we have applied for the state grant. We're asking for the $80,000 again. I've already turned in all the documentation and supporting narratives to show why our district would greatly benefit from having it again. And I showed the number of people that participated last year, the year before, and how we still have a waiting list. The good thing is, if we get the $80,000, we've already worked with Dr. Robinson and REI. The Dina, the facilitator that we are trying to be consistent with in our message and keeping her and her team, we've already set aside some possible dates. So it's two hurdles. One, we have to wait to see if we're going to get the grant, which we hope that we do, the $80,000. But then there are new state guidelines that we're working around, and I'm working with federal programs, Nicole Smith, to help us hopefully be able to get the grant. They changed it to say that certain contractors can only be paid $3,000 a day for their work, including travel, food, and whatever, everything else they would normally travel. And as we know, Racial Equity Institute is $6,000 a day, and it's always 2-day sessions, so that's $12,000. But due to the relationship that Dr. Robinson has with REI and amount of business that has been provided to REI from our district, they've always kept us at the rate that we came in on, I think, the $5,000 per day. So it will still be $10,000 for each 2-day, let's call it a 2-day session. So if we're working with Nicole to see if the person at the state will see that this is reasonable. It's not asking, it's not unreasonable. They consider it unreasonable if it's more than $3,000. So we're working on that with the new state guidelines. But the good thing is we have the date set aside. We are thinking positive and claiming we're going to get the $80,000 again. And we're already working, Cindy has already started working on the contract. We made sure we had the right language so that when we do get the grant, if we get it, we can just go ahead and move forward with solidifying the dates, create the flyer, and send the contract to the board for approval. With this REI grant, it's just like the other ones. It's for district employees, teachers, and leaders that are planning for students. But once again, we never have a problem filling the slots. We actually have more demand than we have sessions and money to provide. So I don't think we'll have a problem filling that up. It will be, I think, 5 or 6 sessions that are regular, let's call it phase 1 REI. And then there are 2 sessions that will be phase 2 REI. As you know, before the pandemic hit, I scheduled it and worked with the Children's Services Council to get slots for members of the DDEC to engage in REI that they were providing slots for. We did a partnership. We would help them get their groups registered, and they would give us 10 slots. Those are the slots that I was hoping to put aside and had already set up appointments for some of you to attend REI. I am still in contact with Children's Services to see where they are, because they end up canceling, of course, due to COVID. And I think that I know that they were still open at that time to reschedule at some point. So I'm not sure of their funding, but as soon as I find out what their funding is, I will once again start that conversation. And those of you that were interested, I will reach back out to you and let you know if we have those slots available that can be paid for through theirs, because our grant is literally held to the district employees. However, we worked it out where you would be able to attend if we went through Children's Services, who was holding the same REI sessions. So I'll keep you posted on that. And we often, I think when I started working on this committee, we had conversations, or you all have been having conversations about leadership not being reflective in our district for our Haitian Creole, especially for our Haitian Creole leadership population in regard to principals and even higher. And so I'm sharing that Dr. Oliver was just named and approved by the board to be the new principal of Pioneer Park Elementary School. And Dr. Oliver has a unique leadership story, but it entails a lot about her journey as a Haitian American here in our district and her journeys through. So she has persevered, and proud to say she will be leading Pioneer Park. Now, I hope it'll be a good day when we don't have to we're not sitting counting the number of Haitian leaders in our district to mirror our Haitian population. However, we haven't gotten there yet, but we are making strides. So once again, just happy that she will be leading the school. I will be setting up a meeting to onboard her properly for her new position, to work side by side with her principal supervisor and the regional team to support her as we do with all principals in our district. But just wanted to highlight that she will be the new principal of Pioneer Park. And I am looking forward to a couple of other leaders that are Haitian that I know will be awesome leaders for principalship, and continuing to work with them until their time comes. So I just wanted to share that. And then we have courageous conversations about race taking place with Ms. Starks. Now this one took fire. So what happened is Dr. Panoy had Ms. Starks come to engage his executive team several months ago around race, around the murder of George that took place in Minnesota. And they began having conversations, which branched off then to them going to their departments, and it has spread like wildfire. So it's not a day. I probably could pull up my email now that I don't have an email message saying, hey, I heard about this protocol Ms. Starks is doing with all of the leaders. Can I bring I had Harvey contact us, and he had all 80 members of all of his departments participate. So we created sections for them. And then we also had school teams, principals. I just got an email message from a principal saying, hey, we missed it, but I want my whole team to participate. We had some things going on. So we're still registering with that. But this is an hour session that she has, and she models the protocol around an article. And basically the article, people are not okay at work. This is not another day at work. And it talks about the racial injustice and inequities that we have here in our society. And she allows everyone to participate, share their feelings, their thoughts, their next steps, but in a structured way that's around a protocol. These are just a couple of the tweets that went out, but this has been going on now for, I want to say this might be going into our third month, and it's still catching fire. So between this, Culture Responsive Leadership, which is a 5-series course, and then Culture Responsive Teaching with the 6 series, this has really gotten us off to a great start to start having those conversations about race. And as you know, one of the focus groups that were done showed in our district that we don't openly talk about race. That was one of the outcomes of the focus groups. So I'm very happy that she is engaging so many to start the protocol. And last but not least, I will say it always ends with, this is what I want to take back. I want to do something this year in my school. And so she's now having follow-up meetings with those that attend the sessions, whether it be CRT, CRL, or Courageous Conversations about race in regard to what are they going to do differently this year, and how can they be supported So I've had principals to reach out to me, Millen, I really want to do a book study. I want to start the POCs around this. Where can I start? It starts, like I say, it's absolutely awesome. She kind of guides them in a way in which, for what they want to do, what book they might want to start out with, what article. So these are going extremely well. We continue to schedule these as needed, and the demand has been high. And we also had I told you about a work group that we had here in the district, creating resources for parents for distance learning so they can be active partners in their children's lives and feel good about it. Like, it was a lot at first when we started. And distance learning still is a lot. It's been enhanced, and our task was to take the feedback of the parents and actualize it. So some of this has everything to do with that. Every how-to video we have created from this work group, which is absolutely awesome. Charmaine is also a part of that work group. Every how-to video has from what parents said they wanted and needed. Nice, to the point, something they could click on their cell phones, in several languages, of course. And these are just a couple of snapshots of those videos. Now that we are about to start school virtually on Monday, we have been spending the last week or so, 2 weeks, making sure the videos get out. Because it's one thing for the videos to be on a website, it's a whole nother ball game for parents to be able to know where that website is, or have it on social media so when they pick up the phones, they can just click on it and they can actually side by side partner with their child and help them navigate through what we're dealing with for onboarding. What we're dealing with for distance learning. And last but not least, I reached out to Mark Howard and Paul Houchins. They recently did a presentation that gives the most recent updates around our babies that don't have access to internet, still didn't have a laptop, computer, highlighting a lot of those inequities in our district, in our communities. And so soon as I get that presentation, which I'm expecting him to send it to me soon, if he didn't send it last night, I will send that out to you and it'll give you an update if you did not see the board meeting as to where we are on that project. And last but not least, we'll miss you, Cindy. Cindy, last day is this week on our team in professional growth. She is moving to Polo Park Middle School, and basically she will be, until we can hire to fill the position in which she served in, Cindy has agreed to kind of still help me along the way. So she'll still be doing some of the tasks, and she's not going to let DDEC go. She actually called and said, look, Millen, I had no idea there will be a hold. I didn't either. We have to turn in due to the pandemic, for any vacancy that comes about, you have to fill out a waiver and send the waiver in and say, hey, I have a vacancy. Can I fill this vacancy? The waiver committee meets every Wednesday and they say yay or nay. Well, when I filled out the waiver 3 days ago, I was told we might want to put this on hold. And I was like, why? And it has everything to do with the governor possibly coming with a round of budget cuts that will greatly impact our district. And so as of now, it's been put on hold for a month. And so I just want to say thank you to Cindy. She's definitely not going to leave. She is starting her new position at Polo Park, and we wish her well. The team is at all kind of goodbyes and cries, and just want to say thank you to Cindy for all that you have done, all that you continue to do, and we would truly, truly miss you. And last but not least, if you all could continue to follow us on our website for equity and access for the district on Twitter. And those are the updates that I have. And Cindy, I will come out of this and stop sharing so that you can put the screen back and take any questions if anybody has them.
Thank you so much, Ms. Millen. Thank you so much, Ms. Millen. I am going to ask that we hold on any questions for Ms. Millen if there is no objections, because I would like, we do have a presentation that we're going a little bit over time. I think someone removed me from the meeting. Okay, we are going time, so I ask that you just be patient and hold your questions if there is no objection, unless someone is really burning to ask a question. I would like to get our presentation started because Ms. Guthrie does have other obligations that she took the time out to come and present to us, if that's okay with everybody. Hearing no objection.
Good morning, Charmaine. Thank you for that. I actually reworked my schedule, so I will be staying for the full meeting. So if you want to field the questions now for Ms. Millen, that's okay. I'm going to be here.
Oh, very well. Okay, without further ado then, if there's any questions, being mindful of the time, please, if anyone have any questions for Ms. Millen or comments or concerns. Hearing none, I yield the floor to Ms. Guthrie. Thank you, Ms. Millen and Cindy. Actually, Ms. Millen, thank you for your presentation or your updates. And Cindy, we will truly miss you. Don't be a stranger. Come visit us.
Thank you. You know, I did have a question for Ms. Millen. Ms. Millen, is the courageous conversations that Ms. Starks is doing with the district staff, is that something she could do for this committee? Could she have, is it topic specific or is it a presentation?
So no, it's engagement. You actually go through the protocol after reading an article, and you go through the protocol, but you're really, so for example, it was all about the recent, how people were feeling about the recent shootings at that time. So if it's something that you would like me to set up to engage the group, our DDEC group, yes, it's not a it's partial presentation, but it's all interaction. Totally.
Okay, great. I think it'll just be good to see the protocol, have an understanding of what it entails. And
okay, well, what I can do is work with Charmaine as she prepares the next few agendas. And what I'll do is get us on it. Usually it's about 45 minutes to an hour, but once you leave, you can go and model the protocol. You can practice it. It's very good. So I can actually include it in our meeting if that's okay with everyone, because I know that's a time that we'll all be together. Would that work? Thumbs up on that?
I don't know what others think about it, but I think it just would be good for us to understand the protocol that's being used with district leadership.
Okay. If Charmaine is okay with it, and I saw a few thumbs up, I can schedule that and get that on the agenda. That's not a problem.
Absolutely, I'm okay with it.
Okay, so bear with us because Cindy is sharing the screen for East this morning. So I'm just going to ask her to advance the slides when I'm ready. So you can go ahead and advance, Cindy. This presentation is focusing on how do you develop a racial equity action plan in your organization that's going to help you to get to the results in which you seek. I had an opportunity to make this presentation back in July at the Advancing the Mission workshop that we provide through Bertha 22's leadership along with the county, looking at helping organizations and institutions who are on a journey think about the continuum of supports that are needed to advance racial equity within your institution and organizations, and how that work that we're doing as institutional leaders helps to really change platforms and outcomes and practices for the entire community of impacted folks that we're dealing with. And so I believe that Charmaine, or maybe maybe someone else, had the opportunity to sit in on my session, and I asked that I do the presentation here. In the interest of time, this is a redacted deck. So if you did participate in July, you're not going to see the full complement of everything we had there, because that was set up for a 60-minute session, and I didn't want to take up 60 minutes of your agenda. Throughout the presentation that I had done before, there were questions that we were doing through a live poll. I've eliminated those, but I will field any questions at the end. But I just would like to kind of run through the slides and let's just see if we can kind of hold the questions. I know that's sometimes difficult, so you can either put them in the chat or write them down, but I will entertain questions at the end. So like I said, again, the objectives is really for us to gain an understanding and a purpose for racial equity action planning, because it is a process and an outcome, as we have long been talking about in this committee. This is around helping to develop a shared understanding and a framework and analysis for racial equity. What is racial equity? What does it mean? And how can we have a common analysis around it that's really going to contribute to our shared learning? And so this is about a progress and a process, right? To build our learning capacity, to build our equity muscle. And I just would kind of offer that during this time that we take space and make space, right? So that each person needs to show up. So I do encourage you to be engaged and think about what I'm about to share with you and ask questions as you see fit. Obviously, if you need to share examples of how you see things working or not working, that's fair as well. But the learning needs to leave, but the conversation is for this group. So be brave, ask for what you need, and then obviously we're doing this virtually, so just be patient with us as we move forward. All right, next slide. So the most important thing to understand about what is a racial equity tool. So there is really a tool, and there are multiple tools, and I have a resource slide at the end of the deck that highlights some organizations and institutions that we believe really have some of the best tools out there. But essentially, a racial equity tool helps us to make decisions, prioritize, and ensures accountability. So this allows us to be really, really explicit in how we're integrating racial equity into our decision making. So as we as a DDC would think about how we're supporting the district in an advising capacity with multiple areas that the district has, we should be asking, how are these decisions being made? Are you applying a racial equity lens? How are you ensuring prioritization and accountability for these new policies or these new practices are being put forth? So I think it's important for us to ask those questions. Again, a racial equity tool is an important step in operationalizing equity, but it is not the only step, right? We recognize that it requires a broader discussion, a broader convening with diverse groups of people, but it helps us to get there, right? So institutionalizing the use of a racial equity tool helps governance structures, helps people who are responsible for making decisions do so in a more equitable, a more accountable, and a more transparent way. So similarly to how we were just talking about, there's a protocol for having conversations. The racial equity tool is a protocol for making decisions, and that really centers equity, and it allows us the ability to have more meaningful engagement, build capacity, and build organizational commitment towards the things that we're trying to advance. Next slide, please. So what do we get from using this kind of framework? And so the first thing that we know that we're getting is that we have to understand that historically systems have played a role in creating racial disparities, racial inequities through our laws, our policies, and practices. Each of us are working in systems and institutions that actually are reinforcing inequities on a daily basis. And really, the racial equity tool allows us to take our blinders off. It allows us to see things that we may not have commonly, the assumptions that we sometimes make as we create policies, as we create practices, as we think about procedures, are oftentimes based from a place of habit. So unless you are clearly looking at what you are doing, applying a lens and having a disciplined way of thinking about your work, you can kind of fall in the same pitfalls and the same habits. And so we know that specifically for using this framework, it is asking us to focus on race, to isolate race, and we know the role that race plays in the outcomes of people of color, right? We can use any number of data indicators, well-being, in conditions for well-being, that tells us that folks of color, people of color are faring less in many, whether it's health, education, criminal justice, you name it, and specifically Black people. And so we know that. So this tool is asking us to think about how is race showing up in our policies, our practices, and our laws. The other thing that this helps us to do is to really be explicit, to make a distinction between what is implicit and explicit bias. Oftentimes when we do this work, we focus a lot about individual practices. What are individual teachers doing or not doing? What are individual principals doing or not doing? But the racial equity tool and the framework allows us to really lift up from individual behaviors to really think about how our institutions and structures reinforce disparities. Because it asks us to really focus on the 5 whys. Why is this thing happening? And that moves the conversation. Once you keep asking, why is something taking place, out of my individual behavior as a practitioner to saying, are there things that are innately in the system that it's causing or reinforcing something to be taking place over and over and over again? And so the tool in terms of accountability, it does hold folks accountable at the individual level, but it's really holding systems and structures accountable. And so this provides us an opportunity to make those clear connections and separate what we think is implicit and what is explicit and what is happening from an individual experience to an institution and structural experience. And last but not least, it is a way for us to be proactive. So often when things are taking place, we are reactive. We're putting Band-Aids on longstanding problems. We're coming in after the fact and saying we need to do this, we need to do that, and now we need to activate and marshal resources. But if we're really using a disciplined framework, if we're using a tool, we're getting ahead of the game in thinking about the implications for the decisions even before they are made. So this allows us to be proactive. Next slide, please. So we've adopted the racial equity action planning process in the work that we are doing. That is a model put forth by GARE, and it has 5 simple. In my mind, they're simple, but they're a little bit involved when you're doing it. But the action planning process has 5 steps, and it talks about preparation, research, information, and gathering. Researching your findings, developing a plan, and implementing reporting and evaluation. Because the racial equity process should be a continuous loop from development to evaluation to monitoring to communication and feedback. And so from the preparation, we really need to ensure that at all levels we are prepared. And specifically, how is our executive leadership understanding what needs to be done and how are they communicating the importance of this work? It has to be owned by the folks who sit at the highest level of the decision making. So when we talk about this to organizations and institutions, we're really saying, how is your board showing up? Is this just something that you're doing with your staff? Is your board engaged? Do they understand this just like the people who have been asked to do the implementation? So preparation is key. You have to have the conversation at all levels, and executive leadership needs to be the ones that's communicating. Why are we taking this on? Why are we going to use a racial equity analysis? Why is this important? And then you need to be gathering information, right? So how do you know that there is a problem? So you're going to research, gather some basic information, assess the organization's culture, structure, and practices. Oftentimes when we think about researching and gathering information, we go straight to the data. And that's all good. We want to go to the data, especially the student-specific data, but we also need to go to the data about the health of our organization. We need to survey. We need to understand the landscape. We need to understand the culture. The interactions of the people in the institutions are just as important as the interactions of those of whom we're serving. And so when you research those findings, you collect all that quantitative and qualitative data, you're going to be looking to tell a story. What does this say about who we are? What is the headline about what does Palm Beach County School District look like as a racially equitable system? And so you would look for any anomalies, any discrepancies, and really create that headline that tells us who we are. And then the fourth step is to develop the action plan. But oftentimes, as leaders, we go right to developing the action plan and we skip over the other steps because we're like, oh, we already looked at some data. We know what this means. We already have identified how to solve the problem. We're going to go right to implementing a plan of action. But if you implement a plan of action without having a clear understanding about commitment from leadership, what your story is, you can kind of, again, operate within those blinders and make decisions based on faulty assumptions. And so the action plan needs to be bold and ambitious, right? These plans that we're putting forth need to be life-changing because, again, we're talking about improving outcomes for folks who have been marginalized, vulnerable, and experience continuous inequities and continuous disparities. And so it needs to be ambitious and it needs to occur at all levels and it needs to be transformative in terms of the institutional change. And so the plan needs to have clear and measurable outcomes. So the plans that we are reviewing as the DDEC about what the district intends to put forth from the around racial equity work, we should be challenging them to say, is this bold enough? Is this ambitious enough? Or is this just a set of activities? And are these set of activities going to really get us to institutional change? And then last but certainly not least, we need to be implementing, reporting, and evaluating. We need to communicate the findings, right, at all levels, but certainly with leadership, raise awareness, and gives an opportunity to convey to the community. These conversations should not stay within the institutional walls because, again, if we're working towards changing outcomes, and in this setting, changing outcomes for students, the work that we're doing and the conversations that we're having and the changes that we're making need to be really communicated back to the community. They are the stakeholders that need to hold us ultimately accountable for advancing racial equity. And so that feedback loop really needs to be inclusive of those parties. Thank you. And so we use a structural plan that, again, guided by a clear vision for racial equity. So I think even this committee has been going back to some early conversations to make sure that we have a clear vision of even just how we're defining equity, right? We're trying to have some common language and structured to achieve these meaningful outcomes. And I'm not going to go too much into this, but essentially we use a results-based accountability approach in terms of measuring the outcomes. And so results, we're always looking at community level outcomes. What is the impact? What are we trying to change? What are the indicators that we're measuring? How are we consistently ensuring that all the data is disaggregated by race, that we're centering race, again, because this is a racial equity analysis. And so we can't shy away from thinking about how is race showing up? What is the outcome? What ultimately are we trying to change? What is that thing that we want to make a difference in? And we can do that at multiple levels, whether it's at the whole county, at the organization, but definitely at programs. We encourage individual departments and individual programs to use a racial equity tool and to say, for example, because Ms. Millen was talking about professional development, what is the bold outcome that we want for professional development within the district? What is the data telling us? How do we know? What are the results that we're seeking? And then the action, and the actions need to be specific. So often I see plans that have a lot of global language. You don't quite know who is the target audience. You don't know how it's going to be measured. So it needs to be specific. And then obviously those actions need to be connected back to the outcome statement. And in terms of measurement of performance, really what results-based accountability is asking us to do is to consider 3 questions. How much of something did we do? What was the quality? How well did it go? And was anybody better off? So we're really thinking about turning the curb in seeing that the indicators are turning the curb and moving in the right direction so that we can celebrate those quick wins. So if we're going to say we're going to take an action to help advance racial equity, what is it that we did? How much of it did we need to do? What was the quality, and did it make a difference for anybody? And how do we know that? What is the data telling us? What are the experiences telling us? Next slide. So essentially, this gets down to 2 things. We have long been systems and institutions that's worked from a transactional approach. We have always kind of thought about issue-based, helping individuals, negotiating. We transact. We buy training. We put people through training. We develop short-term goals. We go on. But transactional approaches are not going to get us to advancing racial equity. We really need to be focusing on transformative approaches. So those approaches, those strategies that are cut across multiple disciplines, right? So it's good for teaching and learning, just like it's good for professional development. So can we identify strategies that are cross-cutting across multiple departments that allows us to do less things but create more impact? The transformative approach is focusing on the policy, it's focusing on the organizational culture, and it's allowing for these shifts. So racial equity work is transformative work. It needs to be transformative work. It needs to be set and positioned in such a way that we are seeing a shift in cultural values and shift in organizational and institutional ways, norms of operation. And certainly, like I've said before, it needs to be clear. And we need to have this ongoing focus on organizing, normalizing, and operationalizing racial equity. So, I think Carlene said in her talk that a lot of places, even though we've put hundreds of people through training, we still don't have a culture that's normalizing discussions about race. People still shy away from really talking about it because for so long we've been entrenched and trained that you don't talk about race, politics, and religion at work. So if we don't have a healthy culture where we can kind of have a discourse about racial equity, can we really be transformative in our work? Are we really going to get to the outcomes that we're looking for? And so the next slide. So maybe folks have seen this. Certainly, if you've probably worked with me in any regard, you've seen this. But we've adopted locally, because we are a member of the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, proud member, first jurisdiction in Florida, their national best practice around organizing towards racial equity, which says that we need to normalize, we need to organize, and we need to operationalize. And in the center of that, we need to always visualize the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. And so this normalizing is around a shared analysis, a shared set of definition. It creates urgency and prioritization. And I think that it is fair that we assess and ensure that we're really at a healthy place of normalizing these conversations. And the DDEC would be a way that we're organizing, right? Because we're bringing community stakeholders to the table to help us assess our infrastructure, our partnerships. And then when we get to a place where we can identify tools and start to operationalize, that's what the racial equity tool helps us to do, to drive those results. And so I share this with you because those are the 3 key steps in really activating the use of the racial equity tool. The next one, I think, is just Cindy, a slide. It's hard to see, but you have the slide deck. Again, it's just another, this is the easiest way to see the tool. The tool essentially has 6 steps: the vision, the data, the partnership, the plan, implementation, and then the last piece of the pipeline is around strengthening. And the strengthening is, how do we hold ourselves accountable, communicate the results, and keep improving? And just as a reminder, when we're talking about racial equity, again, we're talking about where race is no longer a predictor of someone's life outcomes, and opportunities for all groups are improved, right? Because we know that racial equity work is not a zero-sum game. Even though we're going to target race and we may target strategies for Black and Brown people, when we do so, every group benefits. We start to see improvements across the board. And so we want to use a racial equity tool early and often. It should be something that we're consistently revisiting, that we're normalizing and putting into action. This is just another way for you to visualize it, but I just want to call out number 3. And a part of the process tells us that we need to really understand the historical context. It's difficult to do this work if we don't understand the historical context of race relations within our communities, race relations within our institutions. So everything happens in context. It's set on a broader set of conditions, right? Poor people just didn't become poor because they chose to live in poor neighborhoods. So we need to understand the history of why those neighborhoods are poor to begin with. What were the laws and policies that led things to be? And so when we understand that, we can be better engaged in understanding where our students are coming from, right? Our students who are living and growing up in certain environments that had certain deep disparities, they're going to show up in school in a different way than other students who had much more access to opportunities and supports. And so understanding the historical context is an important part of using a racial equity framework. And so what does it look like? These are just some examples, right? So this is a city of Portland. Hard to see from this, but you should have gotten it by email. So they created certain racial equity goals for citywide changes, and then you can see the strategies that they've identified. But in every one of those goals, they've singled out race, and in every one of those strategies, they've singled out how they're going to kind of analyze the things that they're putting forth. So I just put that in there as an example because people always like to know, where can I go and how can I see it working? So in summary, a racial equity tool proactively seeks to eliminate racial inequities and advance equity. That's why we would use a tool. That's why we would use a framework. It requires us to have clear goals, objectives, and measurable outcomes. It allows us to engage the community in the decision-making process, so they need to be a part of it. And when I say community, I'm talking about the community in terms of our staff. So oftentimes we overlook our staff as a critical set of stakeholders, and because they come with a certain experience, right? But then we're also talking about the broader community, the population of people that we're hoping to improve outcomes for. It helps us to identify who is benefiting and who's getting burdened by the decisions that we're making. And it allows us to really think about the consequences or unintended consequences of some of these decisions. Think about how strategies are overlapping and helping us to mitigate, because we're actively applying a decision-making protocol and process and doing the visioning work. So we're really facing those blind spots and those blinders head on. And then it actively helps us to develop mechanisms for implementing strategies and action plans for success, and then gives us a clear process to evaluate the outcome of what we're doing, the impact of what we're doing. So I will stop there and entertain kind of any questions that you have about a racial equity tool. How do you use it? Why do you use it? And so on.
Does anyone have any questions? Ms. Guthrie, have this presentation been brought forth to the district at any point, or is this the first time you're ever presenting it to anyone? Well, you've presented it to, of course, others, but have it ever been introduced to the district?
No, not in a formal way. Now, there could have been many district members. We probably had just some district staff in the Advancing the Mission workshops. We know the district is a strong partner with Birth to 22. But no, this is the first time I'm probably kind of having this discussion with a host of folks who are district related. And the last slide, these are the resources. So when you get the presentation, you can click into these links and you can see some of the information from various tools that are being used.
Kimberly? I thought it were very valuable.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kimberly. No. Go ahead, Kimberly.
So what would our process be to get the district to engage in this? Would it have to be introduced to the board? Do we recommend that we engage in this process? I mean, how would we take it from here? I think this is a wonderful idea, and I'm on board with all of it, but what's our next step?
So I think it's less about the training, right? So this is just about kind of why. I think the question that we would put forth to the district is, have you developed a racial equity action plan? Right? Because we're asking institutions and organizations to actually develop a racial equity action plan that is clear and communicated to all stakeholders and the community about their goals about advancing racial equity. So the district has a racial equity policy, but does that policy sit inside of a larger plan of activities? I don't know that the district has a racial equity plan, but that's a question we could ask. So do you have a racial equity plan, or are you working towards developing a racial equity plan that's saying that if racial equity is prioritized at the district, I know we've been talking about having a racial equity officer and so on and so forth at a high level in the district. That's great. Having an officer is great, but is there a plan that says this is the plan around advancing equity for the entire district? We have a policy, but is that policy supported by a plan? And so we would ask the question, do you have a plan, or are you in the process of developing a plan? And then the second question would be, okay, oh yes, we have a plan, or we're in the process of developing a plan. Then the second question would be, are you using a racial equity tool to help you in the development of that plan? Because this is a tool to help you develop the plan. This is a tool to help you get to the results. So the first question is there a plan, or is there a process or an intention to develop a plan? And then what frameworks are you using in order to get that plan developed? And if they say, this is something we're thinking about, and we would like for this group to support or help to contribute to that process, then we can kind of share like, okay, well, we know that there are these tools or there are these plans out there that we could offer up. There's a process and a training. I'm a trainer for GARE on how to use a racial equity tool, because there's a whole tool, and helping institutions and organizations think through that. But as an advisory group, we couldn't do anything more than our responsibility is to raise the questions, right? Raise the questions and to share opportunities, and then see how the board kind of moves on those things. So that's what I would ask, because I actually don't know if the district has a racial equity action plan.
I think Ms. Kimberly, you hit it right on the head. That's where I was going to go when I said go ahead. And then I think you piggyback on the other portion of where I was going, Ms. Guthrie, with respect to, how is the policy? Well, the policy is just very vague. But if we do have we have a policy, and how does that policy really bring forth action? So I do think that is a question we should pose. And Ms. Millen, do you know if we have a racial equity plan, or is that a question for Ms. Stark, if they're working on one? If we don't know, if we have one, that's great, or if they're working on one, do you know off the top of your head, Ms. Millen?
We do not have a racial equity plan as of now. No, we do not. I know that Dr. Fenoy has committed to, this is the year for the planning and preparation for Dr. Avosa's strategic plan that was created by Dr. Avosa and his team when he came in 2017, 2016, to end and develop and revision and reimage what the new strategic plan will be moving forward. And he's committed to it having total equity focus. So that's the part that I know of. As to what that will look like, we're still awaiting additional details on the vision for that, but that planning is started. So no, we don't have one. Dr. Fenoy has committed to making it a focus of his strategic plan, embedding it all the way through his strategic plan. And right now, what we have been doing is working on executing and implementing the current equity plan that was adopted and helped to be developed by members of this team and others about a year and a half ago. So that's where we are with that. And responding to the recommendations from the New York Equity Institute that was closed back in 2016.
Okay. Did you say responding to working to implement the policy or a plan from this group? Or are you talking about the racial equity policy?
We don't have a racial equity policy. We have our district's equity policy.
Right.
And what our current state is right now is that we are working to execute on the equity policy that was just adopted. Well, not adopted, it's been like a year or two, but we don't have a racial action plan is what I would call it. It's
okay.
Here we don't have a racial action plan that I know of at all, but we do have our equity policy.
Once we got the equity policy adopted, it was during that strategic planning process, and there were different strands, I guess, of the strategic plan. And one of our concerns and one of the things we were trying to do was in the other strands that weren't specifically designated as equity, they were making decisions. Everybody was making decisions all at the same time across many different topics and areas. And we wanted equity to be part of the conversation in all those other rooms and all those other committees and all of the groups that were making decisions or recommendations. And it was all going on at the same time. And we asked to be alerted if they were considering making a decision or a recommendation so that we could add an equity perspective on it and make sure that whatever they were planning to do would have considered equity. And I don't think it was really possible because they were all continuing to move at you know what I mean? Like everything was kind of out of control. So we really have to figure out a way that equity is a consideration in all the big decision making, because we've seen what happens when it isn't.
Right. And so you could even, I can say that organizations, the planning to develop a racial equity action plan or even a strategic plan that has an explicit racial equity focus is a process, and it's something that is going to take a lift to develop us. I work for the Children's Services Council, and we have been working on our racial equity plan for quite some time, and we just brought it to our board last month, and it is up for final approval in September. And when I did this workshop, I polled, I think I had over 40 plus people in the workshop, and I polled, one of the poll questions was, has your organization developed a plan or are you in the process? And it was like kind of yes, no. And then we had the numbers. It was very few yeses, because a lot of people have created a policy or they've created a statement about racial equity, but they have not gone the next journey to actually say, how do we put that in a plan that has specific strategies and action steps that we're going to monitor, that's going to cut across multiple domains. And so we should have a vision to get to a plan, but we could start to use the tool even before the plan. because the tool is going to guide us. It's going to ensure that decisions that we're making on a daily basis, from hiring to who do we contract with for food services, that we're kind of going through the process and having an ongoing analysis of what we're doing. So at the very least, even if there isn't a plan that's developed, we should be asking around, what tool are you using to ensure that equity is centered in the decision making? How are you using a racial equity tool? How are you conducting a racial equity analysis in everything that you're doing, from the practice and programmatic and policy level?
Right.
And I think that could.
I'm sorry. Let me know when I have a chance.
You have a chance. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So this is Joe Sanchez. I'm the new guy to the group, so I didn't want to forgive me if I don't have the history of what the committee's all been through already. But one of the things that I really like is seeing the example that you showed from the city of Portland and the different areas that they cover. I'm sure there's other examples as well. Mm-hmm. And I know that this committee, or at least what I've heard, is that this committee has spent a lot of time on the academics, and that's certainly the most important part of what the district is doing. But I'm also, from my perspective, representing the Black Chamber, I'm also interested in on the operations side and the purchasing side and the administrative side. So I'd be curious. And one of the things I liked about Portland is that they touch on different areas as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that that we do go forward with a racial equity plan, and that plan is all incorporating so that we can see how transportation and food services and facilities and school police and those other parts of the school district are implementing equity in terms of their decision making. Not just the hiring, but the contracting and all those other things that the district does. So I'm all for advocating for something like this as well.
Mr. Sanchez, I could not agree more. As I said, in order for it to be transformative, it needs to cut across multiple areas, across multiple disciplines. And so primarily, I think this group has been focused to your point around the academics and learning supports. But if we don't have facilities and school police that are activated or thinking about equity, that are viewing our students the way that we're viewing them, then we're only going to see incremental changes. So we really need to be bold and audacious across multiple systems and multiple disciplines. And that's what a plan asks you to articulate, because you would be using the tool in every single vein of the district, not just in the academic sectors, but across the multiple platforms. And in a district of our size, that could be, a massive undertaking. And so the very least that we can ask to be put forth is, are you using a tool to center equity in decision making? So are there any other comments or questions?
I just want to say thank you, Ms. Goltry. I think we all received the presentation. I certainly will be reviewing it more, and yes, I think we should certainly get some more clarification, or we should get some more people at the table from the district to hear this presentation, given that we don't have a plan. And I don't think that that's the priority right now, rightfully so. We have a lot going on with reopening, but it still should be, because as we're getting ready to do school improvement plans, schools are opening up with SNAC meetings. This is something that can, a little seed that can be planted right now as we're getting ready to approve school improvement plans. What does that look like at each individual school? So I will be sending emails through this Guerrera or Millen, someone, so that we can further expand on this topic. I'm not going to take too much more of the time, but I think we're still perfect in time.
All right, thanks for the opportunity.
Can I say a question, please?
You're very welcome.
Ebeth, that was a great presentation. I love the content. I think it's very applicable across the board. So it was awesome. The thing is that I keep going back to is when you look at in our county, Palm Beach County, the way diversity is growing and how the Hispanic population is growing by leaps and bounds. And according to the projections of the Census 2020, that the Hispanic population will reach about 40% in Palm Beach County. And for some people, that comes as a shock. No, it is true. Whether they are documented or undocumented, they are here. So therefore, something like this that could be applied across the board, and we cannot think only about African Americans. We have to think about the brownies, the brown people. We can think about the Hispanics, how they're affected and implied in the same fashion, that it is. And yes, I know all the history behind this. Don't get me wrong. But it's about, okay, how can we move forward in a very positive fashion? Because even at the local government level, outside of the school district, what we see is a direction only toward, hey, African Americans. Hello, what about the others? So it is about how can we, work together. And I would like to invite you to another meeting for you to make a presentation, but I will call you about that one. But that was really awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, the racial equity tool is to be used across the board. It just asks us to center race and to disaggregate the data so that if the data tells you that there are greater disparities for certain population over a certain population, this isn't focused only or could be used only with African American. It's just telling us how do we know what the problem is and for who and the depth for who the problem is really impacting. It asks us to be very thoughtful and centering that. And so you're right. It may tell us that in certain geographies, it's more for it may be more for Latinx community than it is for the African American community. But unless we're being intentional around using a tool like this, we wouldn't know that. We would just be kind of making assumptions that maybe it's equally inequitable for both Black and brown folks. So again, thank you for the opportunity. You do have the deck. I would encourage you to check out the resources slide. The city of Portland is somebody that I cite all the time, but there are some other examples that I've included there as well. Thank you. And my name is Marsha. I don't quite know why my mom's name is showing up as on the screen today. But maybe I did a meeting from my mother and I removed my name, but it's Marsha Guthrie, but Yvette is my mom and I lift her up every day.
Very well. Thank you again, Ms. Guthrie. Any further questions from Ms. Guthrie or Ms. Guthrie? Hearing none, is there the next item on the agenda? And I want to revisit that equity plan. I know we spoke briefly about bringing Ms. Starks on or getting some more information from Ms. Starks earlier in the conversation. So if we can do that, but also maybe have that conversation, get a conversation in with Ms. Starks with respect to the racial equity plan. Ms. Carlene, we'll wait for your direction on that.
Okay, two things. One, I just hold on our calendars for October DDEC meeting for Ms. Starks to come and do the Courageous Conversations protocol. So I put a hold on our calendar for that. And the second thing is Ms. Starks had a meeting with Dr. Robinson last week on the 20th, to discuss exactly what you just stated in regard to her thoughts around the racial equity plan. So they had a meeting to have that, to start that discussion. Dr. Robinson met with Ms. Starks about that.
Very well. Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next item of the agenda, which is the equity officer job description. There was several different job descriptions that were sent to each of you, I believe. I had some, Ms. Millen had some. So we've had an opportunity to review several job descriptions. And I don't think we really sat down and pulled a specific job description that would look best for the school district of Palm Beach County. But Ms. Millen, do you know where we are in that process? I know it's been pulled off of the agenda, but I feel like it just went kind of ghost a little bit with respect to the chief equity officer. Do you know where we are in that process?
Well, yes. So the first, when it was first brought to the board and it was pulled due to concerns about the two job descriptions, reorging, let's call it reorging, it was pulled off. And from that point on, I think Dr. Robinson said she had a conversation with Dr. Fenoy about revisiting what that could look like. And it was put off to after school started. That's the last I've heard about it. I reached out to Keith Oswald, because in one of our meetings, I think it was that meeting that Dr. Robinson shared her conversation with Dr. Fenoy, it was stated that it was suggested that maybe Keith come to one of the meetings and share his vision around equity. I followed up with him around that, and as of today, I haven't heard what that is going to be from his perspective as of yet. So right now, all I know is that we were told to continue doing what we're doing until further notice. And the last conversation I heard was after reopening of schools gets settled, that will be revisited. I don't know if that means it's revisited at the board meeting or if that's revisited with conversations with Dr. Robinson. I'm not sure what revisited looks like, except that time frame is that since it was taken off at board meeting, it will be revisited after everyone had gotten school reopened and we had gotten started. So that's where we stand. That's the last I was told.
Thank you.
Also, Charmaine, there is a new position that was just posted in the Atlantic Public School System, and it was not included in the job descriptions that I sent you all. So it's posted now, actually, on their website, and it's a chief equity. Don't quote me, but basically, chief equity officer, chief of equity and social justice, something to that effect. So I will also send Cindy that last one because I just heard about that one, and I'll send that to you as well.
Thank you. Did everyone have an opportunity to look at the job descriptions? Did anyone in particular stand out to anyone? Did we need more time to review the job descriptions? I can't see your faces, so if you're nodding or anything like that, I can't see anyone.
Hello, thank you for calling.
Well, this is Joe. I had a question. So was the conversation about this person being over, I think we're thinking about the direct report to the superintendent. I think that's one thing that we're looking at. And then like who would report to this person? Was that discussion already made?
No.
That discussion was not made. I'm sorry. Yes, that discussion was not made. Go ahead, Ms. Millen. Go ahead, Ms. Millen.
No, I was just ditto on what you were about to say. I'm sorry. I was just about to say that is the question. So it has everything to do with how the position will be organized. The answer to the first part is yes. It's supposed to be designed for a person that sits at the executive level with the superintendent and the executive team. That is a yes. Who will report to that person is what the org chart conversation has to be about, and that has not been established yet. But the first part of your question, yes, that is definitely the goal, is that whoever this person is will be a member of the executive team. So I would just ditto on what Charmaine was about to say.
Do we still need a moment? Maybe, I mean, if I can ask someone who would like to take a shot at taking a little bit of here and a little bit of there from each of the job descriptions and kind of put something in place for the team, or I will certainly take on that task of putting something, and then we can just go and discuss based on that. I just think that if we just keep sharing job descriptions and there's not really an action plan beyond sharing the job description, it's just going to be all right, do we need more time? Do we need more time? Do we need more time? I just need a little direction from the committee. What would we like to do with, now that we have the job descriptions? What are your thoughts?
So Charmaine, can I ask a quick question in regard to what is your goal? Is your goal to write a job description and give it to the superintendent? What is the goal of getting the job descriptions?
Well, we had discussed the goal was to, one, first get the conversation in what exactly is, if we're going to have a chief equity officer. It was pulled back. So to go back with that conversation on, how are we leading with equity? If we're not going to have a chief officer, what are we going to have? Given right now in the entire school district, we only have one person leading equity. That's with teachers, with leaders, with every aspect of the district. There's only one person in a position of equity. So the goal was to, one, put all the steps in place so that the district can go ahead and move forward. If they're moving forward with if they're moving forward with a equity officer, we wanted the district job description of what they were looking for. But apparently that doesn't exist. So we were looking for something that currently exists on what would a chief equity officer look like. And I believe you actually sent us what Mr. Ruiz was. So we were going to go in and we were going to look at other job descriptions and see what was needed in that particular job description. That was goal number one. Goal number two was to continue to have that conversation so it's not another buried topic in the district about chief equity officer or an equity officer, whatever you want to call it or name it. It was just to continue to have that conversation. Not only that conversation, but some action as well.
Okay, thanks.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I just wanted clarification on it. Thanks.
So this is Joe from me. So I think a big issue for me is trying to understand where this person sits in the org chart. So I'm looking at, I think I might want to look. One of those job descriptions was from Broward Schools, wasn't it? I think so. And,
yes, because I'm looking at it right now.
Okay, and then now I'm looking at where this person sits. I'm trying to find the org chart. I found the org chart for Broward Schools, and let me see if I see where this person sits.
Well, see, Broward has a, if I'm not mistaken, because I spoke with, there's a lady, Lata Krashner, and when I spoke to her, Broward has an entire committee, like a department. They currently have an entire department, and they also have a district committee like we have of 30 members. And their 30 members, the person who is in charge of their 30 membership committee is called, let me figure out what that person was called. Oh gosh. The Diversity and Cultural Outreach Staff. They actually have a Diversity and Cultural Outreach Staff that oversees their committee.
Yeah, and I was going to share, Ms. Starks came from Broward. So when we were envisioning what cultural responsive teaching could look like, cultural responsive leadership, we took a field trip to Broward. Broward has a huge department and it's huge. So they have somebody that deals just with the statute. They have a team that deals with just the PD around CRT. They have, like she said, the outreach. They literally have a lot of people in their department that actually does this, and they have the person that Ms. Starks used to report to, who reports directly to the superintendent. So yes, that is definitely, yes.
Okay, well, I see on their org chart, this person reports to a chief who reports to the superintendent. So it doesn't, he or she doesn't report directly to the superintendent. And the chief that this person reports to is the chief of student support initiatives and recovery. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but it's obviously it's an academic, sounds like definitely an academic side of the house. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is we don't want to put a person in a position where they're just like a paper tiger, right? Where they don't have any authority. Nobody listens to him or her, there's nice suggestions, but I don't have to do what you say, kind of thing. So they have to have some kind of authority, and whether it's direct line of authority where they can fire somebody because they're not doing what they're instructed, or at least they have that influence where they can work with other departments to get them to make the changes that are necessary to implement the plan and the policy. So I think that's key to understanding where this person fits before the job description can be done even. And I don't know if it's our committee's job to write the job description, or just to evaluate it to make sure that one is the person is placed in the right position to do what we think needs to be done and has the line of authority that's necessary, and let the staff work out the details on the job description.
That was the last conversation that we had, was that this person, because we even talked about this in a previous meeting, where the person would even be, the job description or the title would even be considered either somewhere near Chief Equity of Officer / Deputy Superintendent. So that person would have direct report to the superintendent. So the ideal person was the Deputy Superintendent would be that Chief Equity Officer. I'm so sorry, I didn't catch your name to the previous speaker.
That was Joe Sanchez.
Oh, Joe, yes. So that was just to give you a little highlight on our previous conversation about this topic. That is where we were looking to go. But I have another question for Ms. Millen. Where did Mr. Ruiz, who did Mr. Ruiz report to? Where did he fall when he was director of?
So he was assistant superintendent, and he had major divisions under his belt. So they put all of student wellness. So really what Dr. Fenoy proposed is what it to be. Before Dr. Ruiz left, student wellness was together with that, social emotional learning, all that was together under Dr. Ruiz as assistant superintendent. When he left, he was not replaced. So they parceled out all of his work and dropped equity work with 2 people in our department, moved student wellness over to another department and took the buckets of work and never replaced them. When Dr. Fenoy rewrote the, job description, they put all of those services back together in one place where they used to be. So 2 years before I got into this position, that's what his title was assistant superintendent of student wellness. Got the entire title, but it was under assistant superintendent. He had a executive cabinet for, I want to say the first, year or 2, and then within a year, the configuration of the executive cabinet changed, and he was not on executive cabinet, and then he left thereafter, and then hence where equity came to grow. So they never replaced his position. So went back to write, the job description, he put it all back together. So that means African American studies, gender studies, Holocaust studies, women's studies, all of that was put back in whatever, but that was pulled. And so that's where that was. So that's where Eddie used to sit.
Okay. So I guess, who did he have to report to? Did he report directly to the superintendent?
Yes, he used to report. No.
Okay.
Eddie used to go to executive cabinet, and Eddie used to report to, I could be wrong, but if I remember correctly, I thought it was Keith, Dr. C at that time. We had Dr. C as our deputy. So it was Dr. C, if I remember correctly.
So to just get a clear understanding, he was not part of the executive cabinet.
Yes, he was part of the executive cabinet for the first
Oh,
week.
he was? Okay.
He was, yes. And then after...
That's what I was trying to get at.
I'm sorry. Yes, he was at the table. Yes.
Okay. So it sounds like his position was very close to what we're looking for, perhaps.
Correct.
If you brought that back and kind of reconfigured those different departments, the wellness you mentioned, and I couldn't remember some of the other ones you mentioned, African American studies, gender studies. It sounds close to what we're looking for.
Right, but I think, sorry.
I know that the district is looking to save money right now instead of adding money, so it may be a little bit of an uphill fight to bring that back, but I think now's the time to make that argument, though, nonetheless.
I think the piece that we were looking for, if I remember from previous conversations, though, was that there would be a direct line site over schools. Because even when Dr. Ruiz was here, it was kind of isolated, student wellness and all of those supports isolated. He didn't have direct line over schools. And what we're seeing is that in order to get the traction that we need to get to implement these changes and to really look at things equitable and look at the distribution across sites, that if we don't have a position that has accountability over principals, that things kind of start to fall down at the school site level, even though things may be changing at the district level. So I think what was put forth, which was why Mr. Oswald was brought into the mix, was because the deputy superintendent has direct line to sites as well as direct line to the other support services.
That's exactly right.
I believe that was the recommendation of this group, that we wouldn't want to see somebody who has no relationship with what's happening at school centers.
That sums it up perfectly. And so the job description that Dr. Fenoy brought to the board brings all of those together, and it had the deputy and equity title. I don't think it was chief equity officer title per se, but it was the deputy of schools, and it brought everything together. But that's exactly right.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I have to grab mine. I'm so sorry, I don't think I had this area as a unfinished business. Just wanted to review the equity before we keep going. With the officer job description, Carlene, just for the sake of anyone who may have missed this in the chain of emails or new parties that have joined us, is there any way you can send Eddie, Mr. Ruiz, job description, past job description to the committee?
Oh yeah.
And let that be let that be something we can compare all of the other job descriptions to, and revisit this back in September, if that's okay with the committee.
I will send that out, yes.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to see what Dr. Fenoy submitted that was not approved, and maybe that's easy enough to find on the district's website or something. I'll
send both of them. I'll send the one that Eddie actually was operating under before he left the district, and I'll send the one that was proposed I'll send both of them. There was two positions because they had one that was going to be over.
Is that
It's the one that was pulled from the
workshop. Was that the one with the chief of student services, wellness and equity? Is that the one you're referring to?
That's one, yeah, but I'll send the other one too, where it's because it had Ed Tierney being over, possibly being the person to be over the other position, deputy of schools, chief support of schools. I'll send all three of them. I'll send three of them.
Okay, got it. Okay. And I think we could really chat between that September meeting through, of course, staff, however, via email, and then really do some groundwork in September. I don't think we had any presentations scheduled for September. Is that correct, Ms. Carlene? There was no presentations that I'm aware of in September?
For the next September meeting? Not that I'm aware of, no.
Correct. Okay, so we can have a working, an actual working committee meeting for September and not have any presentations and really focus on the intentions of this chief equity position. As well as the equity plan. I think we could simultaneously have that. I mean, we're meeting for 2 hours. We can really work on an hour of that and an hour of the equity plan if necessary or if applicable, if there is no objection for September meeting.
Just a point of clarity, Charmaine, what do you mean by work on the equity plan?
I'm sorry, revisit that equity plan, we're revisiting that in October with Ms. Starks, correct?
Yeah.
I just want to, okay, so scratch that. We can focus on the equity officer.
For clarification, in October, that is the 45 minutes set aside for Crucial Conversations protocol for October. October 22nd is...
Yeah, I would hope Ms. Starks can stick around so that we can discuss, ask questions and bring that topic, because we're meeting for 2 hours. We can meet, we can have a conversation and have our thoughts. I know Dr. Robinson had a conversation with her, but maybe we can have that conversation with her as well as a committee.
I just need to change some things on the schedule, because I only scheduled the Crucial Conversation. Now that I know that basically you need her to be here for the entire meeting on October 22nd. Is that what we're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, yeah. I mean, honestly, honestly, to be honest, I actually thought she would be like a staffer that's on this, because when you look at every other committee we have at a district, your academic advisory officer, well, the chief of academic advice is usually on that call. So she's leading the work with equity. So, I mean, I'm just saying, but that's my opinion. That
was the case. That was the case until we are only down to one person. So, like, for example, this meeting, the only reason she's not here for this meeting is literally because if I take her from this meeting, I'm taking slots of 40 slots from teachers that are, teachers that are getting culture responsive teaching. So you're right. Normally that is the case, but we only have one person. And so we had to prioritize. So when I blocked out the original block, that was because I knew she would be doing another session. So if I can cancel that session, if she's not just doing a culturally responsive, courageous conversation. So yes, Charmaine,
I don't want us to go. I just want to, let me clarify what I'm saying. The academic advisory committee meeting, the person who, see how you are the assistant superintendent of professional growth and you are sitting on our call in academic advisory committee meeting. The person who sits on our call is the chief of academic, Ms. Sheffield. The person who sits respectively in every other area. But for diversity, what I have observed was diversity was the only committee that had various of staff sit on there. And it was never a diversity staff member. It was never an equity staff member.
Yeah, but that's
up
not
until
true.
Mr. Ruiz.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah, the last time we had someone, first and last time, was Mr. Ruiz. That was it. And then before you, after Ruiz, it was like 3 or 4 different people. But that's not neither here or there. I'm not going to waste the time, debating that fact. I just wanted to make that point that, I understand what we're doing, where we're at right now. I'm not stating it's wrong, right or wrong that she's not on the call. All I'm stating is that, as an equity, the only equity person, you would want to know what these parents, what these voices that's at the table, and you'll do a great job in bringing that information back to her.
Yes.
That's neither here nor there.
Or, like I say, once we hopefully get additional people, I will add her, because you're right. Last year, Lisa Almashi, and the year before that, Gail Sherman, they were at every meeting with Eddie. It's just that it's down to one person. So yes, I will block it off for her to be there. I had only blocked it off to do the presentation. I'll block it off for her to be there for the whole session. And hopefully when we move forward, whatever direction we end up going in, won't be a problem.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions regarding the job descriptions?
Hey, this is Robin. I don't have a question with the job. Well, it somewhat ties into it. Did we ever solidify an actual definition of equity? I remember in the past couple meetings, we had put it out there that we submitted some definitions for the equity. Where did we go with that, or did that pause?
That's still part of the committee discussions. I was going to go to calendar first.
Okay.
But because I don't want us to leave without approving the calendar, or anyone dropping off the call without approving the calendar. So if we can just take a second, Ms. Guerrera, Cindy, I'm sorry, can you please put up the equity committee calendar? And I think we discussed it through email. It was sent through email, but just want to officially approve the calendar. So everyone can take a look at the proposed calendar dates.
Just wanted to notate that the November meeting is not the 4th Thursday of the month because of the Thanksgiving week. Just keep in mind there are no meetings in July or December. So those are the only 2 things that we had to kind of just change a little bit, was the November month.
Understood. Did anyone have any objections to the calendar? And if there's no objections, thank you. Motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second, Reggie.
Reggie, thank you, Reggie. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Someone opposed? Is that aye for opposed? Did anyone object to the calendar? With no objections, the District Diversity and Equity Committee proposed calendar for 2021 has been approved. Okay. Going back to the equity definition, there was Ms. Guthrie, and maybe my eyes, and I apologize if I did not see any additional changes or comments. Ms. Guthrie presented a equity definition. I believe it was Ms. Guthrie. And the only person who had commented on certain things was Ms. Kimberly. I did notate where I agreed, and I really like that as a starting point to go to work with. But did everyone had an opportunity first to see the definition of equity that Ms. Guthrie presented?
Yes.
And that was the only definition I received. And Kimberly's comments as well. Did someone say no, they did not have the opportunity?
I did not have the opportunity.
Do you have
that?
Okay. do we want to give everyone the opportunity to see the working definition of equity that Ms. Guthrie submitted and Ms. Cindy sent to the committee? I think for the sake of time, I will not, I don't think it's feasible to work on it. We have like 15 minutes, I believe it's 10 minutes left on the call or 12 minutes left on the call. I can certainly have that information sent and we can revisit it next month as well. But we really need to focus on each item instead of tabling every month. We're tabling things because people are not seeing it. So maybe Ms. Cindy could send it out again and we can confirm about email that everyone have received the items, and then we can move forward and really work on the items respectively.
That would really help. If we could just get it again, everybody has a chance to look at it and get it, because I think having that definition will also help in, clarifying that job description.
Very well.
Okay, so it sounds like we're going to do the equity definition in September and do the job description in September as well at the September meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question? Is this description, the description that is in the policy, is this a description that will override the policy's description of equity as an action, equity as an outcome? Just for clarification.
It was just my understanding that we had the policy, but we didn't have an actual definition.
It's a definition in the policy. This group defined what that was. You already defined what equity was in the policy. So that's why I'm a little confused. So that's why I was asking for clarification.
Well, if it's already in the policy, then no, we don't need it. I guess they were just looking for, we were looking for a specific definition, but if it's in the policy, it does not need to be revisited.
No, I'm just asking for clarification because there is a definition in the policy. That's what we're operating off of in the district, or supposed to. The board approved it based on your recommendations, input and recommendations on that policy. So that's why I'm asking for clarity.
I think, Ms. Millen, I think how this whole definition conversation got started, we were in that meeting back in June, or I think that's what the meeting was, and there was some conversations, and I think somebody posed, well, what is the operational definition that we're using for equity? And I think Ms. Starks was there, and there was a difficulty. You were there in kind of calling out whatever we had in the policy. So I think what this group wanted to do is not necessarily to override, but saying, here is the basic policy definition, but do we have an operational definition that we're using as a committee to kind of guide our work around equity?
Yes, and Ms. Starks,
I don't believe we should be overriding. I mean, that is the policy, the definition that's in the policy is all well and good for just kind of an overarching description of what we mean by equity. But when we are operationalizing that, when we're kind of getting to a vision for equity, like it needed, I think, a little bit more layering. And that's what I offered up, some other examples for the committee to operationalize its work.
Ms. Gulcher, I just wanted, because even when Dr. Robinson was also on that call in June, it was we were looking for operational definition, and we established with Ms. Starks also on that call that there was none, and they were currently working on a operational definition. So we offered to assist. Just to add on to that, the committee offered to say, hey, we're going to assist. Can the equity department give us the definition so we can review? And because we've never received that operational definition, we started to create one, and Ms. Guthrie offered a very good one.
Okay, so it's going to be crucial that we use the right language. So operational definition, that's what we need to call it, because then there will be no need for clarification. Because this confusion, we've already created a policy that has a definition in it, and now we're called. So that's fine if we're going to call it the operational definition. because that was not clear to me that's why I asked. I was a little confused, and I'm not the only one. I just spoke up and made the question. So that answers the question. We're creating an operational definition from the policy.
Well, when you look at your website, when you look at the diversity, the area in the diversity website, or somewhere in the website, I don't remember where we saw it, where the glossary, Ms. Starks shared that glossary, there was not a definition for equity. And the policy discussed how equity is defined as an outcome and how it is defined as an action.
Yeah. And you're right. So that's why we went back. Yeah, you're right. Because we had the equity policy on the front page of the site. So we went and took what was in the policy and we put it in the glossary for the upcoming equity website, resource center website. So yes. But
Ms. Starks did say that it would be on her agenda after she got through these courses. And I guess Charmaine asked, how are we going to move forward without having it, or how are you going to write those courses without a definition?
We wrote the courses. See, that's the problem. So that's why I want us to use the right terminology. We were always operating from the district policy that this committee gave input on. We're never going to do anything outside of the policy because we were getting it off the ground. We were actualizing that portion of it. So we were always operating from that. From day one, from the day we started planning, we took the policy and started from there along with the recommendations for the New York Equity Audit. So, you all answered my question. I just wanted to make clarification. If we have a definition in the policy, but you're right, an operational definition, that was the answer. So I'm now clear on what that means.
I have a question. Ms. Mellon, I think you had mentioned earlier, I think it was you, and that was the superintendent's, because I've talked to him a little bit about this. And you mentioned that his looking at the equity through being infused in the district's strategic plan. Okay. So from that standpoint, and I'm not taking any position one way or the other, I'm just trying to get an understanding. From that standpoint, would that be an attempt by the district to operationalize it?
Yes, which is why when Dr. Robinson mentioned to us, like, we need to be developing a plan, I was like, you have to start. If the superintendent has a vision around what direction he wants to let's call it phase 2 of the strategic plan to go in, and we're creating a new one, we need that vision to drive. And yes, that will be an example of it being operationalized. But not only that, I think somebody mentioned before in the other strategic plan, it was not immersed through all parts of the decision-making process and pieces. So yes, that will be an example of what that is, but I have not gotten the full vision from the superintendent on where he is going with what the strategic plan will look like. So once again, we just have a lot of balls up in the air that haven't been settled, but I made it very clear, we've been operating on the district policies definition. But yes, Ms. Calloway, that literally would be, in my opinion, an example of what that could be now that we have a policy, now that there's a commitment from the superintendent around what that could possibly, working on what that could look like for the strategic plan. Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Millen, the question that I have then, is the superintendent going to work on a strategic plan around equity? Should we not then see what he has in mind? And then from that point on, we can give our input. Can you hear me? Now the question that I posed to the group, if the superintendent is going to be working on a strategic plan, and one of the components of it is to address equity, should we not wait until he formulate that plan and then give our input?
Okay, this is Jackie again. I think when we first mentioned or talked about Mr. Oswald coming in, I think that was really the point to find out what the vision was for the district. Okay, so that we could at least have something we had some idea of what the vision was. Now, I know that you're saying that Mr. Oswald, and I know they have so much going on with the COVID-19, and he may not have the time, but then we also have the chief academic officer who may also have some kind of a vision for it. I know she's in close conversation with Mr. Oswald. But I want to think that was the reason why the invite went to Mr. Oswald, to get a sense of what the vision was of the district.
Mm-hmm. I apologize, my phone fell. I think we have a lot to digest from now until September meeting, and if Ms. Cindy can recap everything that we're discussing today as far as actions, what we will be doing in September. I think we necessarily need to wait for a meeting minute for that. I think that will be a starting point. Is there any other questions for the good of this meeting? I think we had a lot to discuss at this meeting, and I just don't want to continue going in circles and asking just questions for the remainder of the meeting. If we have questions that could be answered, great. If not, possibly send them to Cindy, taking them offline, send them to Cindy so we can get the proper person at our meetings to answer those questions if we don't have them. That's okay with everyone.
I have a question. The last meeting we mentioned that many of the kids did not have access to laptops, and at that time we were told that the district was going to purchase some. And where are we right now with that laptop?
I just sent Mark Howard, and I think in my presentation, an email message asking them for the presentation that they did to the board to give an update. Mr. Oswald, Keith Oswald, Mark Howard, and let's say Mark Howard. Keith Oswald and Mark Howard had the most recent updated information on where we are with that, and we made strides. The order was placed back in April for additional laptops, and they gave an update to the board just recently. As soon as I get that update and that presentation, I told Cindy I would send it to Cindy to send out to everyone. I just requested it because they already have done the presentation, but I wanted them to update it since a week on the most recent numbers.
Thank you so much. Is there any other comments or concerns, any public comment for the good of this order?
Yeah, as a public comment, please. Yeah, and very quickly, I just want to remind everybody that the Hispanic Heritage Month starts September 15 through October 15. As we've been doing at the Puerto Rican Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and the Florida Hispanic American Chamber of Commerce, we've been always selecting the Hispanic Teacher of the Year and the 4 Students of the Year. We're working with the communications department, with the principals to submit their candidates based on the criteria that's already been established for many years, and the whole thing, we want to do it in September as part of a celebration in spite of the pandemic, in spite of the corona, the one that to get a recognition in a different manner, that's something we want to do, so it's an opportunity to celebrate. We don't want to let it go. Obviously, this year, we will not be able to hold it at Channel 5, WPTV Channel 5, NBC. We will not be able to hold it there. We're going to do it virtual. So as soon as I have the details for that, I'm going to make sure that everybody knows about it. But it's a nice recognition. It's a nice event. And obviously the students, I wish we could give them a scholarship, but we just give them a token of recognition, so they can go and buy whatever they want with $100, so it's something we want to do. The other thing I want to say is that we are about to finish the census 2020, finishes at the end of September. Well, in one of the populations, so we're talking a little while ago about the Haitian population community. It so happened that one of our volunteers that was doing the census, the person was confronted by asking them, oh, how much are going to get paid for this information? Well, apparently there's some confusion. You know, the only one who gets paid for the information is the city, you know, the government, the state. It's an additional money to the budgets. And so far last week, as of last Monday, Lake Worth Beach was barely 50% of the census completed. Green Acres was barely 62%. Riviera Beach was barely 42, 47%, something like that. West Palm Beach was about the same, the 40%. So we need help completing this because this means money. And it's money can come from the federal funding to the budget. So it doesn't cost taxpayers, you know, directly. We already pay for that. So what is another way that we can contribute? We can help and get the people to contribute. And yes, fill out that form. September 28th, I believe, is the last day of the census. So it's very important. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Yes, it is important. Get out there and get your census and encourage your neighbors to get the census because currently, or as of last week, I believe on our call, Florida is looking to lose a congressional seat due to the low numbers. All right, it is 11:00. Was someone saying something? I'm sorry.
Charmaine, we have radio every Saturday at 2 o'clock, and one of the items that we're going to be discussing for the entire month is the census. Therefore, Mr. One, if you also would like to join the radio show, let us know. It's from 2 to 3 on 1340 a.m.
Thank you. Can you send that information to Cindy so she can share it with everyone?
I will. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It is 11:04. I will not keep anyone longer unless there is something that is burning of desire to share. Without further ado, if I can get a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion.
I second the motion.
Meeting is adjourned 11:05. Meeting is adjourned at 11:05 p.m. or a.m. Sorry. You guys have a great day and the rest of your week. Happy September.
Be safe, please.
Very well.